New text messages have just been revealed in the Brian Kohberger case. Messages that could change everything. This is the defendant's objection to the state's motion in limine. It is the response to the text messages and testimony. Apparently, the defense, from what I can understand, the defense has requested additional text messaging and so forth in regards to the case. So this is kind of a little, I guess, overview of what they have released in regards to that. So we're going to break down these newly uncovered messages. We're going to analyze their significance and explore what they can mean for the case against Kohberger. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and follow us on all platforms. The links are in the bio. Okay, now most of these pages I'm just going to give a brief on, unless it's really important. This is page 2. This is confrontation of evidence as guaranteed to him in the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 13 of the Idaho Constitution. The state is seeking a broad scope of cell phone records for 2 stated purposes. One is to establish a timeline, and the other is for the truth of statements contained in the record. The span of time the state seeks to encompass is about a 10-hour time frame. So the state indicates the initial text is the beginning of the time frame at 2:10 a.m., and that text is not offered for the truth of the matter. What that means is it's not necessary. It's not something that is going to, it's just there for timeline purposes. It's not there for anything relatively important to the case. So whenever you hear truth of the matter, that's what that was meaning. Similarly, at the end of the time frame is a text from the University of Idaho. That, again, is not important. They indicate that there. I know there's a lot of words you guys don't understand. I'll try to break it down. That was at 1:04 p.m., so that was a text from the University of Idaho at 1:04 p.m. The state grounds its request in the rules of evidence and a previous decision by Judge. Law of the case, the state relies on Judge's conclusion and Mr. Kohberger's challenge to the grand jury indictment. However, that decision does not bind this court. The law of the case doctrine applies. Where an appellate court produces a principle of law necessary to the decision state. And then it quotes case cited. And what that means is it's basically case support. Whenever you are working on a case or whenever you have casework, you have a court case, you have to have support whenever you're referencing things. And that is a previous case that has been ruled on that supports that initial conclusion. So when considering whether or not the text message is either an excited utterance or a present sense impression, this court will have the benefit of additional information than was available previously, even if the court determined Judge's decision was the law of the case. This court has discretion to hear and decide the issues presented before the court, and it referenced State versus Hawkins. Discretion to change its own pretrial rulings, especially evidentiary rulings in state. The state seeks admission of certain text for the truth of the matter asserted as exceptions to the rule against hearsay, etc. Excited utterance. This is page 4. This is where we're going to kind of get into the text messages themselves. The state is seeking a select portion of phone records to come in at trial under exceptions to the rule against hearsay. First, the court must be aware of the excluded portions of the phone records, and second, Mr. Kohberger asserts the full record must be made available. When one party has made use of a portion of a document such that misunderstanding or distortion can be averted only through presentation of another portion, the material required for completeness is ipso facto relevant and therefore admissible under Rules 401 and 402. What that's meaning is because they released a portion of the text messages, they're basically stating that it's important to release all of it so that there's no confusion and no issues. Okay, Mr. Kohberger herein provides a more complete but not exhaustive view of DM and BF's communications. Remember, that's Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. This is the exhaustive view of DM and BF's communications and interactions with social media during the hours established by the state. Objection to state's MIL text, Exhibits 1 and 2. DM and BF phone record for phone activity during the state's timeline. This is November 13, 2022. Okay, 210, and remember, seconds are super important when you're in the legal field and you're doing cases. So if you do a lot of true crime, it's very important that you follow seconds. Seconds mean everything. They're make or break in some cases. So 210-29, DM text to EG, which is the Uber driver, inquiring if he was driving. At 2:13 a.m., EG text to DM confirming he was driving. At 2:53 MM, which is Madison Mogan, calls BF Bethany. At 3:51:03, DM creates a new contact on her phone, which is probably going to be the Uber driver. 4:19:07, BF calls DM. 4:20, DM calls Santa. And remember, this is the time that they have been unalived. So, but she's scared and she's trying to see what's going on, that noise that occurred. And remember, the suspect has just left. So Dylan has seen him go out the door. So it's 4:20. She calls Xana. No response. 4:20:20. 20 seconds later, she calls KG, which is Kaylee. No answer. 4:20:28. She calls Bethany for 41 seconds. Remember, that's the remaining individual who survived. She was there at the very bottom, the first floor. 4:21, BF calls Xana again. 4:21:50, DM calls Madison Mogan. No response. 4:22, BF calls Madison Mogan. And then she calls Ethan. No response. 4:22:08, DM to BF. No one is answering. Dylan states to Bethany, I'm really confused right now. This is page 5. At 4:22:42, DM to KG, which is Kaylee. What's going on? Then at 4:23, Bethany, outgoing message on her Snapchat. 4:23:15, Bethany to Dylan. Yeah, dude, WTF. 4:23:28, Bethany to Dylan. Xana was wearing all black. Or she was basically insinuating Xana was wearing all black, so she's asking her, so Xana was wearing all black? And it could have been where she mentioned that during the 41-second phone call, because I don't see it in the text messages. 4:23:33, Dylan to Bethany. I'm freaking out right now. 4:23:42, Dylan to Bethany. No, it's like ski mask almost, she said. 4:23:48, Bethany to Dylan. STFU. 4:23:51, BF to DM, actually. 4:23:52, Dylan to Bethany. Like he said something over, like he had something over his forehead and little in mouth. 4:24, DM to Bethany. Beth, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaking out. At 4:24:07, Bethany to Dylan. So am I. 4:24:11, Dylan to Bethany. Phone is going to die. 4:24:14, Bethany to Dylan. Come to my room. 4:24:22, Bethany to Dylan. Run. Then after that, she says down here, DM calls at 4:24:39. DM calls EC, which is Ethan. No response. 4:24:58, Dylan to Bethany. At 4:27:11, Dylan does an outgoing call. 4:27:30, Dylan outgoing message on Snapchat. 4:27:40, Dylan outgoing message on Snapchat. 4:27:47, Dylan calls Kaylee. Of course, they're unalived at this time. 4:28:44, Dylan calls Xana. No response. 4:29, Bethany calls Madison. At 4:30, Bethany calls Madison. Again, no response either time. 4:30, Bethany calls KG. No response. 4:32:57, DM calls KG. No response. 4:34, Bethany assessed Snapchat. Okay, and this is page 6. There was actually only 8 pages. I put in 7 because the others weren't necessary, really. But the other one wasn't necessary. It was just the end of the document. So at 4:37, Bethany accessed Instagram. At 7:30, BF calls her dad. 8 o'clock, Bethany calls her dad. 8 o'clock calls another number. At 8:01, she calls home. 8:01, 8:02, she calls her mom. 8:09, her dad calls her. 8:05:43 through 10 and 45 seconds, DM on Instagram. Now remember, why is this important? Because in the beginning we were told by prosecution that they did not call 911 until they woke up. But this shows us that they had woke up way before all this. 8:41, 8:42, BF takes photos. 9:04:36, mom texts BF. And it's not to say that there's any significance to it, but it's to say that, I mean, it's just typical for prosecution to lie, because that's basically what they always do. But from 10 o'clock, 56 seconds to 10:01, 40 seconds, DM messages incoming and outgoing Snapchat. 10:01, 53 to 10:03 in 5 seconds, Dylan is on Instagram. At 10:03:30 and 10:04:02, Dylan is on Indeed. 10:04:54 to 10:23:02, Dylan messages incoming and outgoing Snapchat. 10:23 to 23 seconds, and that's 10:23 with 23 seconds. Dylan texts Madison, no response. 10:24:01 to 10:25:04, Dylan on Instagram. 10:30:18 to 10:45:43, Dylan messages incoming and outgoing Snapchat. 11:21:53, JM text BF. At 10:56:49 to 11:29:08, DM on Instagram, messages on Snapchat. 11:29:27, Dylan texts KG, no response. 11:29:41 to 11:32:45, Dylan is on Instagram and messaging on Snapchat. At 11:35:36, Dylan on Yik Yak. At 11:36:07, she's on TikTok. 11:37:36, Dylan messages on Snapchat. At 11:39:09 to 11:40:14, Dylan and her dad text. 11:49, Bethany calls JM. 11:50:55, JM texts Dylan. At 11:44:06 to 11:50:38, Dylan is on Instagram. 11:50 to 58 seconds, Dylan calls EA. 11:51 with 1 second, JM texts Dylan. This is page number 7. At 11:51:07, BF texts JM. 11:51:33, GM texts BF. 11:51:36, JM texts BF. 11:51:40, BF texts JM. 11:51:47, JM texts BF. 11:53:52, Bethany texts JM. 11:53:53, Bethany texts JM. Then she texts him again at 55. 11:54:57 to 11:55:01, JM texts Bethany 3 text. And I would say this is around where she's trying to tell him that she's afraid and she wants him to come over before they discover the bodies. So 11:54:39 to 11:57:01, DM is on Instagram. 11:56, BF calls 911, and we know that first that was actually her friend that had come over. The state has selected text messaging as excited utterances, and they present sense impression. So the totality of circumstances defeat the state's request. Bethany and Dylan text each other a handful of times, and then they were in the same bedroom. They were together with the ability to talk to each other. They were not asleep for 8 hours. It's the messages the state seeks admission of as exceptions to hearsay began with a call and a message about being confused. After texting each other and unsuccessfully speaking with any of the other roommates, the pair were together. The state is looking at the messages with the benefit of hindsight. The analysis has to be done in the moment. The utterances were made. Text messages in this case, DM first claims confusion, then after communicating with Bethany, she claims fear to leave her room. So despite her stated fear of leaving her room, she does so, and she joins Bethany downstairs. So to get to Bethany's bedroom, Dylan had to pass the front door of the residence. So Bethany steps from the front door. Neither of them left the house. Neither of them calls friends, family, or law enforcement for help. Instead, both have a substantial amount of activity beginning in earliest less than 4 hours after DM made her way to Bethany's room. So Bethany and Dylan communicate with friends and parents, and Dylan is also on social media. This is the final page, number 8. The The second grouping of message the state claimed fit within the exception to the hearsay rule are those from DM to her roommates beginning at 10:23 a.m. 6 hours later. The state claims that Dylan woke up and realized her roommates had not responded to her earlier text. The state is wrong. So that just goes to show you how the state can lie, even about simple things, tiny things. So just imagine what they can do in some circumstances in big matters. So that's what the state initially put. The state initially put that Dylan woke up and realized her roommates had not responded to her earlier text. We now know that is absolutely wrong. Even though it doesn't have a big significance, it still goes to show you how dangerous the state really can be in these cases. Dylan was awake. She was messaging on Snapchat. She was on Instagram, and she texted with her dad. This is not an exhaustive list of activity on her phone. She was with Bethany, who was also communicating with her parents and then later friends. Mr. Kohberger urges the court to view the state's request with consideration of the complete picture. The state has asked the court to look at a timeline, and Mr. Kohberger urges the court to look at everything that occurred during the timeline. The state's motion should be denied.
Hey there! Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update.